Alrighty, I believe we're about set up here. Promos are all good, looks like. Just getting the last of this on Discord so I can wave goodbye to all this nonsense. And... Alright. Hello there, everyone. I'm the Last Omnitech, your favorite robot American, and welcome to our Brothers, A Tale of Treachery and Doom art stream. Morning, everyone. Hold on. We need to do a couple things. One, that needs to go up, indeed. And two... There we are. Now we're all set, all branded up and ready to go. I hope you all had a lovely day so far, genuinely. It's been a bit of a thing for me. I'm just going to turn that down to make sure you guys can hear every dulcet tone of my voice. Hopefully it's coming through loud and clear. Still getting used to the audio balance here. And also, a gentle reminder, if you're watching this, either now or later, please do me a favor, go right below, slap the like button, smash the subscribe button and the subscribe button, break it over your knee, whatever you gotta do. But I appreciate everyone who's jumping in and signing on. It means a lot. Especially on this new platform. You guys know how it goes. You move channels, you move to a new place, and suddenly everything's a little quieter than it used to be. But you don't start from the bottom without putting down a couple bricks. So here I am, laying down the bricks. Also, quick little bit here. I know a number of folks recently have like popped in, and they're still figuring out a couple things about how we operate in the channel, that kind of thing. So here's the basics. I don't shill for the most part. I'm going to avoid doing that in the future, unless it's a company I really, really like. But right now, no promos, no nothing else besides one major one. And that one actually is probably the biggest, which would actually be, in this particular instance, a Patreon update. That's right, I've got a Patreon. You guys can find it, actually. I'll be adding that to the video in a minute. But for those of you who are curious, I'm just going to start the video off with a little Patreon thing. Hope you guys don't mind. But that is how these things tend to go. They just have to happen. So, forgive me while I shill for myself for literally just a minute. As I open this up. There we go. Let's pop on over. And give this a listen, if you'd all be so kind. Hey, Voyagers. I'm the Last Omnitech, your favorite robot American, and I've got some news for you all. If you're a fan of my webcomics and content, stay tuned to the end, because I've got a lot to talk about. So, this past Tuesday, a lot of you are probably expecting an update to my anti-fascist Helldiver comic, Gentry Delon Ain't No Fascist, and the truth is, folks, I've got my thumb in a lot of pies. I'm currently writing, illustrating, rulesmithing, and playtesting 2 tabletop role-playing games of my own design. Legacy First Flight, my faster than light, sprawling space opera, TTRPG in the vein of things like Mass Effect and Star Trek. And Summoner the Wild Hunt, my primal fantasy monster taming TTRPG, cut from the same cloth as like Digimon and Monster Rancher and Princess Mononoke and Pal World. In addition to that, I've got my Gentry Delon Ain't No Fascist webcomic, which isn't even my only webcomic, because my Grimdark Future Space Marine webcomic, Brothers, A Tale of Treachery and Doom, it's also been updating every week alongside of Gentry. For those counting, that means I'm releasing 3 separate webcomics every 2 weeks. That's 6 painted panels every week. It's a lot. All this in addition to my work community organizing with the poor and the working class, and my running a bi-weekly livestream actual play beta test of the aforementioned Legacy First Flight system on my Unicorn Head Studios every other Saturday at 1:30 p.m. EST on YouTube. Check it out. But for those of you who are familiar with the rigors of being a TTRPG game master, that's a lot of weekly prep work. the craziest part of it is, I'm not doing any of this for money. In all honesty, it's not bringing much in. Yeah, I know, that's nuts. But the truth of it is, I'll be doing all this even if I didn't stream or post on social media. The worlds I build and the stories I tell, honestly, I make these games and these worlds for reasons for creative passion and self-expression, not for profit. I want to tell these stories, and frankly, I want them to be shared, not locked behind paywalls. Grind culture says you should monetize everything you're good at, but that's just gross to me. I want anybody who's interested in my work to be able to enjoy it and share it and not worry about a paywall. But my current state of affairs is unsustainable. Passion or not, I need a work-life balance that doesn't drive me batty, and being able to pull in even a modest income would make a world of difference in my household and my ability to invest back in these projects. It'd be a lot easier to make a webcomic if my computer doesn't die and I have the parts to repair it if it does. So, after a lot of consideration, I've decided. First off, my comics are on a brief 2-week hiatus. We'll be back with a slightly new comic schedule on March 25th. We'll come back to the scheduling in a little bit. I hate missing the uploads, but I need the breathing room. Because, second bullet point, I'm finally opening a Patreon. Crowdfunding my creative works is the best compromise I can find. That way, I can continue doing what I'm doing and not have to think about putting a price tag on my work. You'll be able to find it at patreon.com/TheLastOmnitect, all one word. I've got 3 tiers at the moment. Tier 1 is the Mysterious Wanderer tier, and at $6 a month, it's a pretty low-impact way to show your appreciation and throw me a little coin. You'll get an invite to my personal Discord with a special role as a matter of thank you, and the personal satisfaction of knowing that you've done your part for something you like. Tier 2 is my Trusted Comrade tier. At $11 a month, this tier is the backbone of my Patreon, and folks at this level are providing me with enough income to have some stable financial support so that I can invest back in my projects and give you some of the benefits. So as a thank you, in addition to the Discord invite, with a unique special role for Trusted Comrade tier, you'll also get update posts on Patreon about the state of my projects every month, free access to any TTRPG beta test materials I release, and your name at the end of every YouTube video on both my Last Omnitect art channel and my Unicorn Head Studios actual play channel. Your name will also appear in a thank you section of any TTRPG work I release, and you'll get to read issues of both my webcomics. Both my webcomics 2 weeks before non-patrons can see them. But if you want to go even further beyond in your support for me, then you can sign up for my Ironclad Ally tier for $50 a month. At this tier, you'll get everything you got at Trusted Comrade, plus a super special role in the Discord with access to an exclusive chat only for your fellow Iron allies and me. In addition to that, you'll get shouted out by name at the end of every video, plus a big place and a thank you post at the end of every webcomic arc I release. Honestly, if 20 folks backed me at this level, I'd be set. I mean, hell, if the Patreon does good enough, I'm more than happy to share my works and my TTRPG projects for nothing to the general public. I don't need a lot of coin, folks. I'm not greedy, I just want to get by. Finally, I'm announcing that my webcomics will be changing their schedule to a rotating bi-weekly update schedule. In layman's terms, what it means is I will have Gentry Delon 1 week, and then I'll have Brothers the next week, alternating back and forth. So, your individual webcomics will update every 2 weeks. On the weeks that they're not updating, I'll at least make sure to post a single sketch or a work in progress to make sure you have something to look forward to. So, that means that I'll have a more manageable pace of only having to do 1 webcomic a week and 1 sketch a week, and you all get a more stable upload schedule. So, that's pretty much the gist. I could show the rest of the video, but honestly, there's not much need to it. I think that we basically covered all the details. For those of you who are interested in supporting me, I appreciate you. That's your best way to do it, if I'm being completely honest. So, now that we've done my little plug, we can get to the actual work that we're all here for. For those of you who are unfamiliar with my Brothers, A Tale of Treachery and Woe, it's actually a webcomic I've been running a little bit, honestly, for a while now on the side. So I run 2 webcomics that you all are probably most familiar with, I would say. It's most likely going to be Gentry Delon Ain't No Fascist, which pretty confident almost everybody here is familiar with at this point. Anybody who's watching my stuff, webcomic-wise, you're familiar with Gentry Delon Ain't No Fascist. It's literally the thing that you're probably here for. But, in addition to that, and I should actually probably change the icon on that very quickly. I recently made a new icon for it. Here we go. So if I swap that over, I can just gently grab that, move that over. Beautiful. Perfect. And now, if I go to the main page, show title page, we're just going to quickly make sure everything looks copacetic here. Cool. There we go. So, you guys are familiar with Gentry Delon Ain't No Fascist, but then afterwards we have Brothers, A Tale of Treachery and Doom, which I have actually been doing for a while now on the back burner. Honestly, it's one of my little side projects that I'm really, really proud of. It's been pretty quiet lately. I've been taking a bit of a break from it, but Brothers, A Tale of Treachery and Doom is basically the story of a bunch of Transhuman Super Soldiers struggling to protect the distant Charybdis Sector in a forgotten region of the galaxy as the Great Rift slowly chokes the life out and separates them all from each other and the greater galaxy. Quote, "They are brave, they are mighty, they are desperate, they are doomed, they are brothers," is the tagline I've got going for this. At the moment, I've currently got 5 comics up, and each one of them is drawn to about the same quality as I've done so far for Gentry Delon. You guys can catch this on my YouTube, on my Twitter, sorry, not Twitter, on my Blue Sky. Twitter is dead. Long live Blue Sky. Geez, hate to see what the sisters say. Haven't heard copacetic in a while. Thank you, Bon. Funny thing is that actually, I don't set this in Warhammer 40,000, which I think is an important distinction that I would like to make. I've had a lot of folks ask, how does this gel with the Warhammer 40,000 lore and that kind of thing, and my response to that is, it doesn't. All truth, it's actually never really been meant to do that. I'm actually going to take a moment here and move the logo above my webcam here. There we go. So I can sort of just... There we are. Let's take that and slap that right there. I'm happy with the way that looks. What do you guys think? Decent enough? Top right corner, bottom left right corner? Still working this out. We're making a couple moves around here. I feel like down here is pretty good. It meshes nicely with the coloration. Anyway, whatever. So, as far as Grimdark Future's lore goes, the brothers, as we're familiar with them, actually, they're not specifically, limited to one gender or another. They're actually quite specific about that. From what I've been able to find, basically means that the brothers themselves actually come in, all sorts of genders and gender identities. It's literally just a blanket term. No different than saying comrades or allies. It's just the way that they interpret it. Lower right-hand corner looks good? Yeah, I think so too, honestly. So yeah, the brothers come in many different flavors and varieties. I've been intentionally trying my best to sort of mess around with a lot of their designs and sort of feel them out as I see fit. Some of the designs are easy, others a little harder. I'm still sort of working out the aesthetic for some of these guys. But basically, it's built around 4 Brotherhoods of these super soldier brothers from the Grimdark Future setting. And that's because Grimdark Future, I think, is a little bit better for content creation and world building, if I'm being completely honest. And I know for a lot of folks out there who swear by Warhammer 40k, they're going to think, oh, heresy. Okay, I'm just going to go out of here. I've never worried about posting something for Grimdark Future and having it taken down, or having a, cease and desist letter be issued. But for Games Workshop, they very much reserve the right to tell you to fuck off. And if you doubt that, take a look at how many amazing creators in the Games Workshop space in specifically Warhammer 40k, have been releasing a lot of incredible stuff over the past decade, and then were forced to take it all down because Warhammer Plus didn't want to have competition in their own space. I don't want to compete with that. And frankly, also, I think that as fun as the Grimdark Future, like, factions are, and they are, don't get me wrong on that, I still think that there's just a little bit more that I can do than that, if that makes sense. I can do better by myself in a lot of ways. So, we're starting from scratch. The lore's more accommodating, and more importantly, it also makes the narrative a little better when not everyone's a fraud at the mouth maniac who hates each other on principle. I think that makes for a far better tragedy. So, today we're kind of going to do a little bit of doodling. You guys are familiar with some of the art, so if you're familiar with what a Space Marine is, I don't need to redefine it for you. Transhuman Super Soldier. Basically the definition. Grimdark Transhuman Super Soldier. Over 40,000 doesn't even have the, they don't even have the market quartered on that. They just have a very specific aesthetic. So right now I have 4 separate Brotherhoods, read chapters for your 40k fans out there, in the comic. At the moment, I have and I'm just going to open up a new document. We're just going to take one of these and copy it. And we're just going to delete everything. There we go. We'll start from complete scratch here. Save this as Protectorate. This is just going to be data files, concept sketches. Here we go. Concept sketchpad. We're starting completely from scratch today, folks. We're going hard here. All right. Wait. Perfect. We're going to just rasterize that. Cool. And we have our little gesso layer. So there are 4 chapters of Brothers relevant to here. The first chapter is the pretty classic chapter that I think most of you are familiar with the aesthetic of, which would be the Knights Numenary. You already seen one of them. That's Daxan here. They have a very specific sort of aesthetic to them. It's very Games Workshopian in a lot of ways. So if you're looking for like the more classic Marines, especially the Primaris aesthetic, then yeah, that's basically what the Knights Numenary are. They are a very much more like traditional kind of knightly sub-faction of the setting, as it were. And I'm kind of just like vibing here. So I reserve the right to go back and redo any of the doodles I'm doing. Because we're basically just here to have a little fun today and sort of figure out some aesthetic distinctions. Here we go. This is where I'm going to open this up on the side and sort of pull that out so I can actually observe it. Off way out there. I hate that they always like make it super wide. Which faction character is the most evil? Oh, hands down, that would probably be, oh man, which faction's the most evil? Like, hands down, the easy one in 40k is probably the Dark Eldar. Like, there's a lot of people out there who'd say it's otherwise, but they're wrong. It's definitely the Dark Eldar. It's not even a question. Oh, this is all in the gesso layer. Crap. Let's start from scratch. Hold on. 100. There we go. Okay. Let's start from scratch on that, shall we? That would definitely be, for 40k, the Dark Eldar, I would say. Because they have a choice, not, like, they literally lock themselves into being evil, depraved maniacs. But, in terms of the current comic, that's tough. Let's see. That's fair. At least Tyranid is plain absorbing. That's actually the worst you can expect unless you're dealing with a lictor. Yeah, pretty much. And specifically the Death Leaper. Now, if we're going by the setting that I'm currently working on, I would say for Grimdark Future, the evilest faction probably is the Brothers, if I'm being completely honest. The Brothers in Grimdark Future are set in a specific setting, in like a specific like part of the setting, known as the Protectorate. Basically, in this setting, the Emperor doesn't have the excuse of, I'm fighting the Chaos Gods, the Emperor is literally a guy known as the Founder. His whole thing is he wants to uplift humanity using transhumanism into a new golden age. Unfortunately, he's not above eugenics and horrible shit to do it, and starting massive, like, planet-sprawling wars. And he literally overthrew the entirety of Earth's existing governments in order to create, basically, his own little perfect fiefdom of genetic perfection. Which, by the way, if your plan for taking over the world is, if you could have M. Bison from the Street Fighter movie make the exact same argument, and, like, that's considered normal, then you probably didn't think your plan through well enough. I'll take being turned into a transhuman. That's fair, but, like, this isn't a, like, uplifting in a positive way. This is in the ones that can do. The ones that can't are either an underclass or exterminated. Not great. This led to a giant civil war of humans being like, some just didn't want to do it, and they very much preferred to stay human. And so the brothers, who were the the genetic super soldiers made by the Founder, started a war and kicked all sorts of crazy ass against all the humans who kicked all sorts of crazy ass. There was a huge war, basically they're called the Horse Heresy, where some transhuman brothers thought, well, everyone should have the choice to determine who they want to be, and some were all in on their father's vision of a perfect transhuman, perfect transhuman vision of humanity, eschewing the fact that that would mean killing a lot of humanity off to do it. Oh, don't worry, he got melted. This is the whole thing. So the Founder died in the battle and was transferred into this system that basically rebuilds his body. It's very much, what's the name of the way to describe it? Like, Foundation, if anyone's watched the TV show Foundation. He's basically Theon. Is it Theon? I think it's like the Theons or something like that. He's basically the Emperor, in that setting, where every couple, like, 100 years, his old body dies, the conduit clones a new body, and he transfers his consciousness into it, but the old body dies. So they all, at the climax of this epic battle, was when this giant wormhole opened and sucked them all into the Charybdis Sector, which is the core of the Grimdark Future. So basically, in that Grimdark Future setting, the Charybdis Sector, the humanity that was fighting that war, we have no idea what happened on Earth at this point. That's completely not relevant to the plot anymore. It's gone. It's out of the way. Instead, humans are stuck in the Charybdis Sector and have basically spent the last, like, couple of centuries rebuilding it to their needs. And they've more or less splintered into 3 major factions. So, if we're going by the 3 major factions here, then the 3 major factions that are involved in the Grimdark Future setting are, first off, I'm just going to do this right, hold on, let's see, there you go. So the first ones are the easy ones, and those would be the brothers. So, the brothers are exactly what they sound like. They are the transhuman descendants of that Founder, now the Conduit's original vision. Read as super soldiers, barely human anymore. In this setting, the interesting thing is that becoming a Marine actually shortens your lifespan. It doesn't improve it. So, as a result, you're on a timer. You're willfully sacrificing your life to become a super soldier, to protect humanity. But it's not all it's cracked up to be in a lot of ways. So, and depending on which variety you are, if you're a Prime Brother, you burn out even faster. So, that's kind of the setting for the purpose of, like, you know, the Space Marines in this setting. Let's just swap this over to a color that I can work with. So, I'm just gonna go with the generic... There we go. Generic Brothers helmet with generic Battle Brother. I'm not clarifying which faction they are. We're just, especially when it comes to my, like, local sector and its local rules. Here we go. So you have the Battle Brothers on the one hand, brothers. So, on the one hand, you have the brothers. Transhuman inheritors of the Conduit. They've made a subsector known as the Protectorate, which I'm just going to replace the actual name here with the Protectorate. So, the brothers fall into the Protectorate. The Protectorate is basically that perfect transhuman society that the Founder was going on about when he was making all his crazy decisions to, you know, basically do his eugenics. He didn't achieve his vision of a perfect world, but this is as close to it as you're going to get. So the Protectorate hangs out in their own chunk of space as their own empire. They're very hostile towards the other members of the galaxy. That's or at least towards the other human members of the galaxy. As far as they're concerned, the original war is over, but the final, like, bell on it is undetermined. We don't know who won, and they're very keen one day on probably finishing that battle and deciding who actually won the war for humanity's future. So, Protectorate. They themselves operate very much like an egalitarian society in a lot of ways, but they're an egalitarian society with an authoritarian underbent, which is, on the one hand. Just be aware of that. So that's the Protectorate. That's the relevant one here for us. So if we had the Protectorate here, the other factions are the Sisters. Now, the Sisters are a little different, again, than the Sisters of Battle that we're all familiar with from Warhammer 40,000, because in this setting, they're actually not devotees of the Emperor, they're devotees of their own cult. They have their own perspective on what it means to be human, and they are built around this person, basically a resistance fighter against that original member of their faction. Basically against the that original, like, founder character. She resisted them, and in doing so, she basically became she was killed at the peak of this battle, but when she died, she went out and actually managed to somehow ascend to godhood. At least that's what these sisters believe. They genuinely believe that she's out there now, the first human deity. And so that is what the sisters believe. Hey, Sir Bones, good to see you. Good to see you. Yeah, they're actually kind of cool for the most part. They actually go and they largely help people as needed. They act very much like an emergency relief force. The big issue with I believe the Sisters sub-faction, if I can remember the full details. Let me actually take a look at this because I have this in my one-page rules lore document, which I refer to frequently. Very frequently. There we go. Lore. We actually have a whole world book for this setting, by the way. It's a very, very fun setting. I love Grimdark Future. Also, it's free. Good to see you, Sir Bones. We're talking about the setting, the Grimdark Future, and hey, look at that! It's a sister, right in the very front. Grimdark Future actually released the Sisters as the first human faction that got miniatures in their setting, in their rules. And so they have probably the most unique visual identity of all the human factions. I very much like the Sisters. They're very cool. Their big thing is they don't really listen to the other human factions about their borders and their laws and their governments. They kind of go where they feel compelled to go, which oftentimes means they go off half-cocked, and they'll enter someone else's territory, trying to do good and maybe causing chaos in the process. Not capital C chaos, lower C chaos. So here we go. The map of the Charybdis Sector, which is what we're kind of going at here. So the zone is basically this giant, horrible, like, that's basically the Eye of Terror for them. Ironically created not by elves, but by dwarves this time. Dwarves screwed up super hard in the Grimdark Future world, so thanks, dwarves. Thanks, dwarf guilds. It's all your fault. It's all your fault we have a giant hole in space-time and it's threatening all of us. So, let's see. As I recall, the Protectorates, the Human Cluster... The Human Cluster is sort of where the Sisters operate out of. I don't actually think that they have territory. I think they just operate out of the top of the Human Cluster in their own vague, like, subsection of it. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. Oh, yeah. They actually have one of, like... There we go. That's what a sister of... That's what one of the Blessed Sisters looks like in Grimdark Future. Look, humans do a lot of bad things, too. Oh, yeah, no. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I actually agree with that wholeheartedly. Trying to see if I can find something specific, because usually they'll actually talk about it. Oh, wait, hold on. It should be at the very top. Serious map humanity arrives first contact. Inner Sphere, Outer Sphere, Frontier, Lost in Space, Galactic Society. I guess it's Galactic Society, is it? No, it's factions. There it is. 26. Wait. Defense Force, Robot Legions. They're in here somewhere. I guess they're just not in here yet. All I know is that the Blessed Sisters sort of operate in their own space. They do what they want. Dwarves dug too deep and fucked up an entire quadrant of space. Yeah, that's pretty much how it works in Grimdark Future. So this is the Cirrus Sector, generally speaking. This is where the majority of Grimdark Future takes place. We're not in the Cirrus Sector in Brothers, A Tale of Treachery Doom. I migrated us a little more to the galactic north, away from the edge. This is technically on the frontier of space. Like, this isn't Coreward. This is the other direction. This is on the edge. We're going even further beyond into the darker parts of the galaxy. This is why the Brothers play such a huge role in this setting. Because the Protectorates are the most galactically further, I guess that'd be, in this instance, it'd be I believe it'd be Antipode? Or Antipode is opposite. They would be most rimward. That'd be the term. Rimward and coreward, spinward, counter-spinward. Galactic coordinate, like, galactic directions are weird. Because you're not on, like, a sphere like us where we're looking at the world from a flat perspective. You're on a disc that's spinning. So it's like trying to orient yourself on a record player. So you want to know how close to the edge you are, how close to the center versus how close to the center you are. And if you're walking the way the disc is turning, or against the way the disc is turning. So that's how you navigate. So they're more spinward, or they're more rimward than anyone else. And as a result, they tend to go further out. It's also why the Dwarf Guilds go out that way. Also where the Havoc Brothers, which is Chaos, more or less come from. So the Protectorates are their own thing. They decided to reach out and spread outwards towards the rim, which is where the Charybdis Sector exists. And that's where we get to talk about the setting a little more. Whoop. I think you guys are going to see literally everything before I get to it. Ah, yes. Okay, cool. Alright, so, Charybdis. Charybdis is our core section of the galaxy. Any flashbacks to middle school, Zenith versus Nadir? Yeah. Fun fact, a term specifically for planetary bodies in relation to other planetary bodies. The Charybdis Sector is a chunk of space that's centered around a supermassive black hole. Not quite as big as, like, the core of a galaxy, but a big enough black hole to affect the orbits and tidally lock several dozen stars. Meridia. Yeah, fun fact, I drew this around the time Meridia was a thing. So, yes, you're not wrong. I won't pretend. I'm not gonna lie. But, yeah, so the Charybdis themselves are, the Charybdis itself is a supermassive black hole, around which the rest of the Charybdis Sector rotates. All the other stars are caught in a stable orbit around Charybdis, which is unique, as most stars don't establish stable orbits. Instead, they sort of have a descending, falling orbit. But here, Charybdis is so stable and so massive that the orbits will take literally millions of years to decay. Possibly billions. So, as a result, all the folks in this region of space are pretty comfortable living there. Purple and black holes just belong together. I concur. I completely concur. So, we have so far, for our factions, we have the Protectorate, we have the Blessed Sisters, who operate out of their, I believe they call them abbots or abbeys. So I'm just gonna call it I'm just gonna call it, instead of an abbot or an abbey, I'm just gonna call them missions. Or just the sisters, yeah. Sister missionaries. That's the proper term, I suppose. We'd be referring to the Blessed Sisters within the Charybdis Sector. So, sister missionaries. These two factions are very much at odds. They do not like each other whatsoever. And also, that song is so good. I love Supermassive Black Hole. Then again, I'm a sucker for that whole album because, what can I say? Muse is just good. Assassin is my favorite from that album. So the Blessed Sisters and the Protectorate are diametrically opposed to each other. The Protectorate believes that the whole of humanity is theirs to eventually rule. The Sisters literally come to the aid of anyone who needs it, regardless of their personal wants or, basically they go where they feel they're compelled to go, which often leads them to stick their heads in the wrong place. Finally, we have the HDF, which is the Human Defense Force. And the Human Defense Force in the region actually operates, and I'm just going to undo that. There we go. We're going to open... Where did I put the Grimdark lore thing? Here it is. So they operate out of the Human Cluster, along with the Sisters. So, the HDF, Human Defense Force, read Imperial Guard, they're not like the Imperial Guard in the same way that the Guard are a bunch of, basically drafted peasants, more or less thrown into, a horrifying war. Instead, the HDF is very much a modern-style military. These guys actually are well-equipped. So if you want a better comparison for them than the Imperial Guard, I'd say a better comparison would actually probably be Halo's Marines. And to a degree, their armor even matches the Halo armor aesthetic. So they're not just a bunch of random guys thrown at the problem. They actually have a very surprising amount of technology. They even use robots extensively in their deployments. They're a pretty cool faction. I very much like them. They recently just got a miniature release, which I would say looks really, really good. But the big thing with the HDF is they're limited by their capacity. Even though they have the bulk of humans in the sector under their name, they're still sort of working with less resources than the other factions have. The Sisters have a huge amount of donations that they can operate off of. And the Brothers kind of just they basically have their little pocket space empire to work out of. Unfortunately, the HDF has neither of those things. Instead, they've basically got this really large, sprawling mass of humanity and all the issues that come with attempting to maintain a more traditional style of government. Basically, they're making all the same mistakes that the UN and that the current world state of affairs is making. And they're trying their best, but it's, well, let's just say that I'm not expecting that the HDF are going to succeed in the long term of uniting humanity. They're too bad at it, if that makes sense. So we have the HDF. Human Defense Force. We're going to take that, shrink that a little bit. 24. Sure, that'll do. Yeah, they're pretty cool, actually. I like the Human Defense Force. They're a fun bunch. They're not perfect, but they're trying their damnedest. Okay. So the Human Defense Force. We have the Protectorate. 24. Cool. And we have the Sister Missionaries. All four of these forces, or all three of these forces, are opposed in some way, shape, or form. They don't like each other, they might not hate each other, but they basically view each other as hostile nation states in this setting. So these three are all fighting over who should rule humanity. Let's make sure that's not so loud that it obliterates your ability to hear me. There we go. Okay. So our primary force is the Protectorate. Or at least the Protectorate explorators out here. So in the distance of this whole thing, of this whole comic, is this epic space opera currently going on between humanity and them sort of struggling to see who's going to rule. But in the meantime, the Charybdis Sector is nowhere near their territory. They're all trying to impose their will from a great distance. Because the only thing that really matters here, at the end of the day, hold on, why is it not doing it right? There you go. It's like, what the hell? At the end of the day, Charybdis is going to do what Charybdis wants to do. So I'm just going to have the little black hole here in the middle just for the fun of it. There we go. Cool. So, the Charybdis Sector in and of itself has its own missionaries. Now, these missionaries are known as the Watch Charybdis. We're going to copy this at this point. Duplicate, move this down. Cool. So make sure I spell this right. It's been a hot minute since I spelled this. Yes, that is correct. So the Watch Charybdis is a group of 4 brothers, or I should say not 4 brothers, but four Brotherhoods, each of which are watching over the sector, as far as they're concerned, for the Protectorate at a distance. However, we need to acknowledge a couple of important details. The first, and the easiest one, is that these brothers themselves are no longer technically part of the Protectorate. They're isolated and off doing their own thing. Each one of them has their own motives, and technically while they are all still sworn to protect the Charybdis Sector on behalf of the Protectorate, they are defending it much the same way that the royal, I suppose the proper term would be like the, what was the name of that one from so long ago? It's been a hot minute. The British East India Company, more or less, is what the equivalent of the Watch Charybdis is. These guys went out and explored the Charybdis Sector and the populations that lived there, and they're sort of doing their own thing now. Yes, there you go, you got it. East India Trading Company. It's pretty much exactly what they are. So we're just going to hit the hue on this guy here. Should be hue. Whoop, hold on, that'll explain it. So, of these factions, there are currently 4 groups of brothers in the region. The first is the Knights Numinary. We're going to do this as an overlay. Actually, we'll do this as a darker color. That should work better. Darker color. Hello? Oh, I see. I did it on the wrong layer. That definitely does explain. I was like, what the hell? Why is this not working? X. There we go. Now we can merge that down. We're actually just going to kill that entirely. There we go. Cool. I can rotate this out. Let's try this dance again. Now that I've got the right layers selected. Okay. Cool, 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 cool. And let's go with hard light here. Perfect. Alright. And then we're going to go with a darker color. Cool. So, Knights Numinary. The Knights Numinary are, so far, the guys we've been following through the comic the most. Our main character of the webcomic is actually... I'm sort of bouncing between 3 at the moment from the Knights Numinary. So far, the one person that's been, like, consistently relevant. Hey, Alec, good to see you, homie. Truly good to see you. I hope you're doing well today, buddy. Do this as a multiply. And put this at, like, 45. There we go. Cool. As I sort of put this here. Beautiful. Okay. So now we got ourselves the Knights Numinary. Awesome. Okay, so the Knights Numinary are one of the 4, I should say, Space Marine factions. Knights Numinary, we're just going to copy this, duplicate, pull that up a little bit. Knights Numinary. And we're going to shrink this down a lot more, even further. Cool. So, Knights Numenary. These guys are the main characters, or the main factions so far we focused on in the comic. In fact, actually, you recognize one of them. That's Daxan. Especially you specifically, Alec. You would recognize this character, and my inability to save all of you over and over and over again. So yes. We have 4 major characters from there. Their whole thing is they are largely trying to protect their citizens on the world of Ascade, which exists within the Charybdis Sector. Basically a frozen alpine world. Lots of mountains, lots of pine trees, and ruthless whipping winds. These folks live in a very hostile environment, but they've made surprisingly self-sustaining cities within them and live a surprising egalitarian quality of life. Their whole thing is around defending their people. However, they're not perfect. I'll be the first to tell you. So yeah, there's our Knights Numenary. Lump these guys together. Yes, that is an apothecary, actually. Inside of in the Brothers, they actually don't have a term for apothecary, so I'm literally just using apothecarian at the moment. It's not like Games Workshop has the copyright on the term apothecary. They can deal with it. And they're not the only one to invent the trinary helix. I use that for Legacy, so their symbol's even up for grabs. Fuck you, Games Workshop. Anyway, as a result, so we're gonna go over here and save this fast. So the Knights Numenary are doing their own thing, trying to survive and trying to save their people, doing their best to uphold their specific personal ethics, which, you know, they're trying as best they can. I think that's the nicest way to describe it. They're trying. Let's make that about 18 works? 18? Yeah, 18 works. There we go. So I can just sit them there like that. Cool. That works. So, Knights Numenary are one of the 4 major factions. Our next faction is actually, this will be the Guardians Culprite. Safe to grab a muffin, Omni. I don't know if it's still good. Yeah, you're good. Hold on, let me pass it up to you. Give me 1 second, folks. I am nursing a slightly sicky girlfriend, and I can do this. I will do this. I pass up your muffin. It's okay. No problem. Is your butter looking good? Okay, good. My amazing partner, Bond, everybody. Also, I'm glad Ian is good. Much love, Alec. It's really good to see you, buddy. Okay, so our next faction is the Guardians Culprite. I've actually done a little bit with these guys before, so I feel like we should definitely talk about them a tad. They're our next of the 4 of our sub-factions, more or less. So that'll be, if I open this up, Protectorate, Guardians Culprite, and, well, bam! We've already seen them a little bit earlier. So the Guardians Culprite, as far as factions go, and we're going to go all the way back to the top here. There we are. Beautiful. Should be able to playlist shuffling. Cool. Alright, awesome. So, the Guardians Culprite. These guys are actually kind of interesting. So, if the Knights Numenary are inspired by ideas and, like, if I was to choose cultural backgrounds, my immediate thing would be Germanic, obviously. Literally, Knights Numenary, if I was to choose, like, anything, it would be a Germanic influence on them. But these guys, on the other hand, have a totally different cultural background behind them. So I'm going to move this out of the way and open it in its own thing so I can just, like, pop between the actual pages I want to use. So you guys don't have to see literally everything. Here we go. Okay. Cool. So the Knights Numenary had this very specific culture about them that's very much a, like, classic style German warrior lodge sort of vibe. And I don't mean World War II. I mean the actual, like, classical Germanic tribes. Or almost Nordic to a degree. They're very much built around the idea of brotherhood and camaraderie and coexisting with their fellows. They don't really have a divide between normal mortal humans and their transhuman side. Unlike a lot of the Protectorate, which often holds the non-augmented humans in a sort of sub-underclass, whereas the majority of, like, the transhumans, and for the record, like, normal folks are transhuman in Protectorate society, too. Cybernetics, genetic modification, it's all super common. So it's very, Night City-esque, almost, but a little bit less, actually less corporatized, more just augmented. I would actually say Forerunner civilization from Halo, closer to? Anyway, if the Knights of Numenary have a very specific, like, brotherly camaraderie to them, which they do, then, on the other hand, the Guardians Culprite, whose document I'm opening up right now, they're actually built around logic, and their whole culture is built around solving a problem. So, these guys are combat engineers, par excellence. Their whole thing is fighting against intelligent machines. So the Knights of Numenary are kind of like the general fighting force. They fight wherever they need to fight. These guys are specialized for taking down what in 40k we would call machine heresy. For the Guardians Culprite inside of the one-page rules Grimdark Future setting, their biggest adversary is actually the machine cults, who have their own sprawling empire. And so they're very much used to dealing with the diabolical infusion of machine and man, and the horrifying ways in which it can blend. So much so that their very core identity is built around a device that they refer to as the Labyrinth Rune. So the Labyrinth Rune, as I zoom out here, this is actually it's not their chapter symbol, but instead the better way to describe it would actually be, this is a chapter device that many of them wear. Which is like a golden, basically it's a golden plate, which usually has Culprite, which is a gemstone, mildly conductive, laid on it usually in a sequence of labyrinthian structure of some kind. A labyrinth being a maze meant to be walked through. In this case, their labyrinths are intentionally designed to entrap programs and artificial intelligence. Because beneath that circuitry, that Culprite circuit, they have thousands of defenses, electronic warfare suites, an ECM array. Basically, this thing is designed as a cage for artificial intelligence. So if someone tries to backhack their armor, they get stuck. They're not able to go any further. The whole idea of this maze is that the more they have... Each Guardian makes their own maze, their own labyrinth rune. It's bespoke to them, and the older they become, the more skilled they become as a Guardian, the more they tool it over and over again, making it into a uniquely complex structure. So, these labyrinth seals are designed to slow artificial intelligence down to an utter crawl, so they can study them and quarantine them. It's a pretty potent defense, and their whole thing is fighting against ancient technology and weapons of aliens. So, that's sort of their whole shtick, if we're going by. In terms of their color scheme, Guardians Culprite have a very distinctive color scheme. They have red, and then they have sort of like a brassy kind of texture to them. Might have frozen, guys. Oh, thank God it didn't freeze. This is going to get very angry if it froze. Okay, cool. Cool. We're going to save this. So I like the idea of these guys being cast in bronze. Sort of their whole shtick. There we go, it's this one. Cool. We can use this as dark color. Put that at 100. That'll do. Okay. So, Guardians Culprite. More or less, pretty much as we see them here. In terms of their culture, they value artisans, they value engineers, they value thinking. They're a scholarly brotherhood more than they're a war-making brotherhood, if that makes a degree of sense. They're still transhuman super soldiers, don't get me wrong, but if they had to choose between going to war and reading a good book, they'd take the good book every time. They're the sort of folks that you'd probably actually want to have, like, a little time with. Now, if I was going to be honest with you guys, and I am, I always want to be, they're very much inspired by the salamanders of 40k in a lot of ways. their genetic flaw, where the Knights Numenary, their skin crystallizes and becomes eventually like glass, entrapping their bodies. The Guardians Culprite, their skin actually sort of is slowly spread with these crystalline structures, not unlike the Knights Numenary, but what for them slowly encases the Knights Numenary until they literally can't move and they're entrapped. For the Guardians Culprite, instead, it's more like a really bad case of dry skin. It causes their skin to sort of like crystallize and crack. It makes movement very painful. That needs to be abraded away. It can flare up and disappear repeatedly. It isn't usually lethal, but it does mean that they have a very distinctive look, almost like they've got volcanic, like, almost sort of like volcanic rock, where you can see Culprite, like, peering through the gaps in their skin as they crack. So they have a very distinctive aesthetic for them. So that's the Guardians Culprite. We're going to duplicate this. Bring that over. Make that this. Cool. Cool. Guardians Culprite. So that's two of our four brothers of the Watch Charybdis. Next up, we choose probably the most iconic one in terms of their distinctive aesthetic, and that would be the Venator's Titian. The Venator's Titian are actually descended from the Wolf Brothers. In this setting, Wolf Brothers are pretty much exactly what they sound like. They're Space Wolves. Space Wolves players rejoice. However, the Venator's Titian are not wolves. They're actually foxes by aesthetic. They have intentionally rejected their ancestral heraldry. Basically, they were created in the image of the wolves, and then as time went on, a rift split between them, where the wolves are very much pragmatic. They're like focused very less on the pragmatic side of things and more interested in acts of glory and heroism and tales to be told. The Venator's Titian just want results, man. They just want to be left kind of alone to do what they need to do. And as a result, they're kind of okay, just like, leave me be, as a rule of thumb. So, Venator's Titian, I'm going to open this up and bring this over here so I have a reference, because I actually need to redoodle this helmet. It's a very distinctive helmet that they use. Cool. Save this fast. Cool. Document is saved. Awesome. We can go to here. Perfect. Alright, so first off, I always give them fox ears, because I think the fox ears are really kind of like iconic to their helmet design. So they're very cunning, and they're a little bit underhanded as a rule of thumb. They're willing to do whatever it takes for them to accomplish their tasks. And if that means striking at civilians, if that means bombarding people from orbit, if that means basically doing all the things that Space Wolves would find very uncouth, they're like, nah, we'll do it. We want to win. We very much would prefer to win over be the nice guys. We'd much rather have people be alive than have our tales sung. And so eventually the brothers of the Wolves, the Wolf Brothers, just said, fuck it, we don't like you anymore, go away. And so they said, fine, we never liked you anyway. They left in their own kind of fit. So now, the Venator's Titian basically have exiled themselves out to the Charybdis Sector, more or less trying to, I don't want to say, they're not engaging in penitence because they're not trying to prove themselves to anybody, but rather they're trying to build their own thing, far away from their erstwhile cousins. So, where the Guardians Culprite, their whole shtick is they're trying to, and also this is where I get to change the coloration of their eyes. It's a very distinctive eye color. Normal. Here we go. Beautiful. And let's swap this out here. I want to get those eyes very narrow and Anki looking, because they are very Anki. As a sub-faction, they're the Angi angsty boys of this region. Where the Knights, Numenary, and Guardians Culprite live relatively in, I don't want to say peace, because they're still battle brothers, right? They're still fighting. But their regions of space are pretty well policed, and they don't have to worry too much about it. They are sort of general combatants for the Knights, Numenary, so they fight where they're needed, their own holdings secure. And the Guardians Culprite largely exist in space as a fleet-born brothers force. On the other hand, the Venators Titian, they are still a fleet-based chapter, or in this case, Brotherhood, but they are very aggressive. And they're primarily focusing where the Guardians Culprite are infrastructure, and the Knights Numenary provide general defense and reactionary forces. These guys focus on policing the void between stars. These are the guys that prevent enemy fleets from sneaking into their territory, that assault the foes of humankind at a distance, hopefully so that no one ever bothers them. And also, preferably, no one assaults humanity's holdings. Let's go to darker color. 100% works. Here we go. Venators Titian always have an orange color associated with them. So if I had to choose their heraldric color, that would be it. It's orange and gray for them. Basically, besides their orange stripes, they're completely willing to strike their own colors for advantage. A very frowned upon gesture by a lot of other factions, especially brothers. And this is me doing quick little doodles today, folks. I will get some slightly better aesthetic eventually, but, like, we're just establishing the setting right now. What about Space Skunks being basically Stinky Badger? Something tells me that there isn't a Brotherhood alive that wants to be associated as the Space Skunks. That sounds very much like the exact sort of thing they'd be like, we're not space skunks. Don't call us that, that's mean. Here we go. Venators Titian. There we go. Fun fact, Titian's actually a color. Specifically, it's an orange-red. It's a very distinctive color. In like ancient times, though, Titian was the color you would use usually to denote red in heraldry. So, Venators Titian, Guardians Culprite, Knights Numenary, which leaves us with one final brothers faction that we gotta talk about. And before we get on to the rest of this, in the Watch Charybdis. And that would be our friends here on the end. And they have probably the most distinctive armor of all of them, even more than the Venators Titian, dare I say. And that would be the Arachnia Astra. So, as I zoom all the way out and go to my... This is actually going way back, because this is where I actually pull out art that isn't from my current work. This is actually old art I'm pulling out. Whoop. Hello. I just closed a bunch of things. Close that, close that. Yeah, let's close that too. No, I don't want to save anything. Cool. Alright. This is where I pull out... Come on. I know you're here somewhere. I very much know it's here somewhere. Not to forgive me, I'm literally digging through. Some of this art is incredibly old by comparison. Like, actually very, very old stuff. Oh, right. Duh. That explains it. That explains, like, why couldn't I not find it? Because it isn't in Dark Heresy. It's actually over here. Arachnia Astra, Catgirl Marine, rah, yes. Everyone loves the veneritician. They're my furry bait. For those of you who really, really want furry marines, that's the veneritician. Adi Nawad, on the other hand, and his Arachnia Astra are a very distinctive flavor of marine. These guys, in case the name didn't give it away, space spiders would be another appropriate term. So the Arachnia Astra are famed as being probably they are definitively the oldest chapter, the oldest brotherhood within the Watch Charybdis. So the Watch Charybdis is just the most recent version of it. There was a Watch Charybdis once before, but when the Charybdis Sector was cut off from the rest of the sector of Sirius, as a result of a series of massive celestial events, known only as the Tear, unfortunately, the Arachnia Astra were stranded behind what was, at the time, enemy lines. They were basically struggling to maintain the sector itself. This led to a lot of chaos. Havoc cults erupted all over the place. Xenos factions emerged and basically plundered the sector. After the individual nation-states and world governments of the Charybdis sector all failed, the Arachnia Astra, who are usually used to, at one point, they were more known as like occultists and studiers of esoterica and knowledge. They were very much, in the classical sense, like Thousand Suns for you 40k fans. However, in this particular region, when the sector fell to shit, they realized they had to change. After losing a lot of their brotherhood, they went underground, hiding themselves away almost completely on their homeworld, which they effectively reduced to little more than a radioactive wasteland to protect themselves. The moon that they exist now on as their primary fortress is over what's left of that miserable homeworld, and on that moon they maintain a deep, hidden fortress, wherein they operate from. The Arachnia Astra are nowadays built around subterfuge, manipulation, lies, stealth ops, and witchery. They study the arcane to manipulate it to their advantage. They utilize the technologies and the weapons of their foes. They infiltrate cults and set them against each other. And more importantly, out of all the different factions, they're the ones most worried for their souls. Because these guys actually practice witchery. They actually use havoc magics, occasionally, at least for the purpose of hunting them. So they're quite a thing. And they have a very distinctive four-eyed helmet, which is one of my favorite elements I think I've ever drawn in any like design ever. I really like their helmet. So I'm keeping that for the fucking comic. So, we're going to open this up. It's going to be Arachnia Astra. These are the guys that were the vanguard before everyone else. When everyone else bailed and died, they were the guys that got stuck behind. And they're quite still happy to be around, but they are kind of dancing on the edge of what they know is damnation. They're not that pleased with the state of affairs, but they do what they have to survive. That's kind of what their whole thing is. They endure. Now, the Arachnia Astra have a very unique internal cult known as the Web of Lies. No, don't mask that. Get out of here. Here we go. There we go. Perfect. That'll do. So the Web of Lies is the idea that there's this big cosmic net. And whenever a lie is told or knowledge is spoken, it enters that net. A massive consciousness. This is their perception anyway. Their internal brotherhood cult. The second that words are spoken, they enter the Web of Lies. The Web of Lies can be read and navigated for advantage. That's literally their perception. So for them, lies and truth have power. Quite literally, in their case. They use witchery to detect lies and to weave lies, to manipulate others. They don't tell other people their name. In fact, out of all the brothers, they're the hardest to spot on the battlefield because they might not even be in the system when they're engaging in war. They might be manipulating pieces from a great distance. They're not interested in having all the fancy accolades of other brotherhoods. They don't much care, even for the vendors Titian's chasing of their own identity. Instead, these guys are interested only in survival, and they'll do anything to achieve it. There we go. And well, this is fine for now. That'll actually do for now. These guys fear the most for their immortal souls, as we would refer to it as. They're well aware of the terrible shit they've traded in. They know what they're dealing with. And they genuinely believe at this point that the sector isn't lost, but it's certainly trying to be lost. They've hung out all the way through that dark time until the Protectorate could send reinforcements. These are the old guard. The oldest guard. Probably the saddest boys, if I'm being honest with you. There we go. Darker color. Actually, for them, they have a very distinctive shade of purple that they operate on. There we go. There it is. Found it. I was like, I know I have this color. Perfect. And here we are, the Arachnia Astra, the last of the 4 Brotherhoods protecting the Charybdis Sector. Quickly doodled out for my own benefit. Let's go here, because I want to make sure I get that looking good. Cool. We're going to duplicate this. Move that over here. Cool. And set that color. See that nice shade of purple. Arachnia Astra. Best beans, the spiders. I like them, they're fun. Space spiders. Space spiders! So these 4 Brotherhoods here form the heart of the Watch Charybdis. Which... here we go. Bam. Beautiful. We're going to duplicate that with a black backing. Primarily. There we go. So the Watch Charybdis are these 4 Brotherhoods attempting to maintain this region of space, which is really fucked, generally speaking. The Watch Charybdis itself has to contest with a bunch of local powers. So let's quickly go through those. Beyond the distant forces of humanity, which themselves are sort of their own enemy, in a way. Imposing their own will, their own perspectives, and what they believe things should be like. We're going to take the HDF as well, shrink that head a little bit. Because I don't believe that guardsman heads should ever be bigger than marine heads. I think that's a fallacy Games Workshop has kept for way the hell too long. Here we go. And the Blessed Sisters. Cool. That'll do. A little shorter, maybe. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, in the distant Charybdis sector, we have the Sister Missionaries, the Protectorate, and the Human Defense Force all pushing their way in, attempting to control the sector. The Watch Charybdis technically answered to the Protectorate, but at this point they've been independent for so long that they're kind of almost used to it. It's their territory. These 4 Brotherhoods treat the Watch Charybdis as their home. And so they're not as keen on, like, being ordered around and what to do in their own house. You wouldn't be. I wouldn't be. I don't like when someone busts into my home, even if it's my landlord. Sorry, landlord, just the way it is. I like my space. And so, in addition to these forces from the external pushing their way in, when they are trying to control things. On the one hand, let's just quickly doodle this out. Let's actually make ourselves... I guess we're making yet another, like, faction map, is what it's turning into. I might have to rename this a faction map of the Charybdis Sector. Charybdis Sector 101, I suppose? Alright, cool. So, on the one hand, we have these forces pushing in from outside the Charybdis Sector, but within the Charybdis Sector... Actually, I can take this moment to just go like, let's do this fast, flavor this. Here we go. We can take this and just reduce the opacity significantly. There we go. We can just take humanity and sort of scooch it a little further down. That'll do it. So on the one hand... kind of want to do that like this. Influence from Sirius, the Protectorate, the Human Defense Force, and the Sister Missionaries. Then on the other hand, we have from within the sector. Cool. So within the Charybdis sector, we have the opposite problems. And also to make sure that the audio is not a little too loud. There we go. Cool. So within the Charybdis sector is where we get to a lot of different factions within humanity. We have our own cults, which are not that great. Let's be real. Everyone's got problems. Everyone's got problems. So we have Havoc cults. There we go. I'm just gonna get a little bit of editing up in here very fast. Just make this look a little bit neater. Cool. So, Havoc cults. We're going to hit this with a nice bright red for the darker color. Hit this with like a paler kind of gray for the face mask. Here we go. So, Havoc cults. Havoc cults are not nice business. Basically, these guys are doing their best to try to sow chaos and confusion within the sector. Call this Havoc cults. Now, in Grimdark Future, there is, in fact, chaos. That is a thing. It's referred to as the forces of Havoc. In case that wasn't clear by my terminology so far. Let's move that down here. A little different than the gods of chaos in the sense that they're not all powerful. They are incredibly powerful entities that come from the wormhole, which we mentioned it a little bit before. But, I believe it's here. Here we go. So the wormhole is the center of the zone in this. Again, thanks, dwarves. All your fault. All your fault. Not that humanity was much better for or not that the elves were much better anyway. There's a reason why the space elves, you know, the Eldari. I'm going to try to come up with a slightly different name than just space elf for them. In my webcomic, something equivalent of their own language or their own terminology. But yeah, they, much like the Eldar, or Eldari, had an empire. It kind of died. That's why it's largely, like, futzed out. And the robot legions now have their empire over that. Yeah, in this setting, the elves made the robots, and the robots rebelled. So, don't piss off your servants, basically. Pay minimum wage. Give them rights. Whether they're robots or not, they'll still beat the crap out of you. Guillotines can be made by anyone. So, Havoc cults. Havoc cults exist all across the Charybdis Sector. They're largely managed by the Arachnia Astra. So we're going to go back to our background here. I'm just going to draw a red line on arrows in terms of forces as they are dealt with. So. Havoc cults attack basically the entire Charybdis Sector. And they are attacked in turn by the Arachnia Astra. Who their whole job is to manage and slay cultist activity within the region. Again, these guys are all about witchery and deception and doing their best to try to fight that. The Venators Titian do their best to try to interfere and attack folks from outside the Protectorate who are attempting to act within the region. So this comic is going to see a lot more human-on-human violence than you would normally see in a lot of Warhammer 40k, where oftentimes it's Xenos versus humanity, and while there's plenty of human infighting, it's usually considered like not the way things normally work. In this setting, it absolutely is the normal way things work. Most human factions are at war with one another in this setting. The Human Defense Force and Sister Missionaries technically aren't, but they're getting to that point. They're starting to get really iffy. I'm going to just draw this here. So the Protectorate is seeking to reestablish themselves, but I'm not sure they would be considered a threat. I think everyone's kind of curious about what their whole play in this is going to be. Whether they're going to be enemies or allies, what have you. But we do know they're seeking influence in the sector. I feel like I should spread these guys out a little more, so I can do this a little more neatly. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do that. Let's move these guys around a little bit. I like the little setup we have, though, drawing the flowcharts. That feels very clean. So let's do this right. We're going to save this fast. Okay. As I close these guys up and give each of them a color, that makes it easier for me to track them. There's Titian, and then you guys get purple. Cool. Alright. So, Arachnia Astra. Vener's Titian. Knights Illuminary. Guardian's Culprite. Yeah, let's do it that way. And we'll move the whole thing up a little bit. Cool. So on the one hand, on our background, sister missionaries seek to infiltrate the sector and spread their influence amongst the populace. Spread their cult, basically. Human Defense Force, they're at war with the Protectorate. It's technically like a really hard-earned, like a hard-fought peace right now, but it's still war. The Protectorate has technically assisted the Watch Charybdis. They're the ones who gave them their mission, but at the same time, there's a question about how, like, well-liked or respected these factions are amongst the Protectorate. Especially the Vener's Titian, who kind of are the... Like, the Arachnia Astra are venerated for surviving as long as they did in the dark. The Guardian's Culprite and the Knights Numenary have no real, like, blemishes on their honor in any way, shape, or form. But the Vener's Titian turned their back on their brothers and made their own brotherhood. They intentionally already told their forefathers to go fuck off. So, as a result, yeah, there's a big question mark hanging over them in regards to how relevant they are. So, Havoc cults seek to attack the sector. And really, they don't seek to attack the sector. They seek to conquer it for themselves. They've been there already. It's really more a matter of them fighting a guerrilla war against these guys. The Arachnia Astra specifically focuses on countering them. Next, we have ourselves, within this sector, a couple of sub-factions. This is where I get to draw some new stuff. So, some of you guys might have seen some of my latest art that's been getting, like, done, some of my minis and that kind of thing. Well, and if you haven't, let me be the first to show you. Here we go. Alright, cool. So, as I try to find this art, where did I put it? Oh, right, it's in here. Whoopsie. Ah, hell. I'll just show it to you guys the old-fashioned way. Hi, everybody. Main cam here. So, one of those factions that they'll be encountering is the Tau. Hopefully you can actually interpret that. So the Tau Union are very much, if you're familiar with Warhammer 40k, similar to a degree to the Tau Empire. Not quite fully, though. I'm still working on getting these guys painted, but they'll do. So the Tau Union are very much the technology side of the Tau Empire made into their own sub-faction. They actually have a part in the book, I believe, specifically. It's in the factions section. Here we go, 26. So they used to be ruled and governed by artificial intelligence, but then, after things sort of went sour on that, they have their own sort of perspective now. These are the Tau Union, as they're referred to as now. DAO, Tau. So, they're their own little sub-faction. Incredibly intelligent, very much driven by logic and practicality. They are egalitarian in the truest sense. For them, their whole civilization is built on a meritocracy, but a meritocracy that's mathematically calculated out. You are put exactly where you belong, and if you don't belong there, you will eventually get to where you need to be. There's no shame in failing. In fact, actually, that's just you discovering your limitations and the things you're good at. For them, warfare is an unfortunate thing that has to be fought. And so, as a result, strategists, tacticians, soldiers, the folks who are put in these positions are the ones who volunteer and the ones who prove their aptitude for it. Warfare isn't governed by generals and by a military, what we call a military-industrial complex for the Tau. For them, it's mathematically quantified as the least possible force necessary to contain a threat, and the most possible force, or I should say the most practical force necessary to end one. They, very much like the Tau Empire, prefer to operate at range. However, unlike the Tau Empire, and this is where I get to zoom out a little bit so you can actually see them a little better, unlike the Tau Empire, these guys are capable of melee. And if you doubt that, they actually do have the capacity to fight significantly. So the art and the designs I'm going to be using aren't the pure Tau Union. We're using a specific sub-faction, which I'm still renaming at the moment, so pardon me on that. I just need to make sure that I'm doing everything correct with my own internal lore, because we're still shaking it out. They're referred to at the moment as the Nemyar Prototype Technology Coalition, an automated force. So that is why we have these these robot drone troopers, basically. They're not drones, they're just wearing particularly advanced technology. Also, for the record, if you're into, say, one-page rules, or you don't mind the idea of buying miniatures that are outside of the Games Workshop space, which I highly recommend, like, seriously, go buy from outside the Games Workshop space, for God's sake, there's so much good stuff. Here, some of the art that I'll be using. The range is known as the Poiper range, by an awesome creator known as Piper Makes. I'll be using these aesthetics for the Tau Union. Super excited to get some of this art actually drawn. So for now, we're just going to go with the simplest drawing possible of these guys, which is going to be the disc head. It's a very distinctive aesthetic that they have. So we'll go with that. We're going to give these guys a nice purple color because I'm planning on going with like a purpley shade for them. Purple and gold is probably their big colors, so let's actually go with gold. We don't have too many gold colors out here. Guardian's Culprit are the closest, and that works. So all these forces aren't the core forces. These are the ones that are present within the Charybdis Sector. The actual wargame of OPR has as many factions as there are in Warhammer 40,000 and more. They're just slightly... they're just a little bit more... how do I describe this in a way that makes a degree of sense? They're just a little more contained, and their lore is a little distinct. Here we go. Okay, so we'll go with this. The disc heads, I feel, are very distinctive, so they work very well. There we go. We can sort of erase this. And then we just sort of give it this sort of disc look around it. Cool. And then we sort of give them the little, like, internal center disc that they got. Nice. That'll do. And I can sort of shrink this down a little bit because it's very big and overdrawn. Here we go. Shrink that down a bit. Cool. That'll do. Let's look at the Tao Union. Their troops. You have darker color on, so I can sort of hit this with a little bit of purple. A little bit of gold. Let's make it a darker, richer purple. There we go. You rotate that out for this. We have their gray. And then we have their bright gold. Cool. Tao Union. So these guys, they prefer to use technology, but unlike the Tao Empire, they're not wholly dependent on it. In fact, they actively do their best to ensure that that isn't something that they're super dominated by, since they literally just got through what is the equivalent of a robot uprising. So, they're not keen on making that mistake again. Thank you very much. There we go. Darker color. Perfect. There we go. So the Tao Union. So these guys are here doing their best to slowly infiltrate the sector, to control it, turn it to their purposes. I'm going to take this. Tao Union. We're going to shrink that a little bit. Pull that in a little closer. We'll put the Tao Union. We'll put the Union underneath that. I feel like I can do the same with habit cults. Here we go. It's a little better. Okay, cool. So the Tao Union are doing their own push into the sector. Though the motives that they're using, no one's really sure. No one's really sure what precisely their plans are. The Guardians Culprite, used to dealing with advanced technology, are the ones who are fighting the primary front against the Tao. For the record, very recently, the Tao were fighting the Knights Numenary, but the Knights Numenary and them are kind of not very specialized against each other, so they kind of just stopped fighting. They're not really getting enough territory, so they're both sort of just doing their own thing. Our next faction is one that we've talked about a little bit. We have currently, I think, 5 alien factions that are present here. I'm roping 2 of them in together, though, because they're both sort of their own sub-faction. It's the Robot Legion. The Robot Legion of Neuraliset, which is their own very specific sub-faction. Robot Legion's probably one of my favorite ranges in one-page rules. I love them. They're not just Necrons. They're their own thing. They're very much more Geth, but Geth with a lot more individualized personality. So they have their own identities, their own sardonic behavior. They're basically people that were once enslaved. Probably a closer comparison would be the... Oh, man. I can't remember their name from the one particular show. Specifically trying to... Kalon. The Kalon from... the Kalon from the Orville. By the way, if you haven't watched the Orville is like an excellent franchise. Like, legitimately the best Star Trek that's come out in years. I won't go into too much details because I don't want to spoil too much. But the Kalon basically are self-aware individuals. But they exist in a larger networked civilization. So in a lot of ways they can seem very, like, machine-like, but they have their own personalities that they're starting to slowly disseminate with time. That's very much the case with Neryla Sepi robot warriors. They're their own. The robot legions themselves are sub-factions. Automaton. Yeah, you pretty much nailed it, Sir Bones. They're automatons in a lot of ways. I'm actually basing these guys not just off my big goofy head drawing, but I'm getting better drawing them over and over again. These are actually one of the bespoke sub-factions of one-page rules with their own unique, awesome miniature line. They're super cool. I love them to death. They are legitimately one of the coolest ranges that they've ever done. And every time I ever, like, someone's like, you should play, like, what faction should you play in one-page rules? I'm like, you should play Robot Legions. Every single time. You should give them a shot. Just trust me, they're really freaking cool. But, in terms of these guys, here we go. Robot Legions. They have a very distinctive aesthetic to them. And they tend to have these long, beaky heads, which are very specific in their aesthetic. Let's see if I can find the Robot Warriors, I think. I just want, like, a picture of one that is higher quality. Yeah, here we go. We'll just use this. This'll do. Yeah. One-page rules. Those are the Robot Legions. They are really cool. Really fun to play. Their whole army tends to be a little slower, but they also have a lot of saves, so they actually endure a lot. They also are fearless and have some pretty fun weapons. So their whole thing's of carefully planning and executing their army's movements like a machine, like a program. Do it carefully, it'll benefit you. So the Robot Legions, or at least a Robot Legion, exists within the region. Each Robot Legion has its own separate sub-faction and lore, so I feel completely justified in making my own within the region, which I already have. These guys are Legion of Neryla. I'm just going to call them Robot Legions for now. Cool. We're going to get our little doodle on here. Little doodle bob. Whoop, hold on. Wrong one. There we go. Okay. Cool. Okay, let me just sort of take that. Doodle that there. We give him eyes. And the lines that they all have. There we go. Cool. Cool. That works. Alright, and then we just sort of go in there and give them the purple that I use for my guys, because my guys, I'm using my literal army colors. Because you all can't stop me. It's my webcomic. Deal with it. Cool. Awesome, and then we hit it with a little bit of that silver for the darker color. Cool. Hit it with a little bit of the gold that I use as an accent. Awesome. So we have ourselves our Robot Legions. These guys are basically the most obvious, like, villains I would say, of the Xenos in terms of their, like, sub-faction sort of arrangement. Yep. Robot Legion. Here we go. I can sort of take this and put this here. Center it out a little more. Cool. Robot Legion. That'll do. So we have our Robot Legions. And they're pushing into the sector because these guys are waking up. They've been around for a long time. This territory is somewhere they've settled a long time ago, long before anyone else was trying to claim it. And they're kind of still doing their thing waking up. At the moment, the Robot Legions have not really done enough to warrant a direct response from a lot of forces, but both the Guardians Culprite and the Knights Numenary have dealt with them in the past, and probably will in the future. They're a slowly growing threat that has to be managed as far as the Watch Charybdis is concerned. Now those are the... These are 3 of the 4. We have one final alien sub-faction before we get into our local aliens, which we're not going to get too much into. The homebrew ones. This last major faction is actually probably one of my favorites. And we've actually drawn them already. That will be the Saurians. So the Saurians are one of the coolest factions in one-page rules. Hands down, there's no comparison. They're just really fucking cool. It's the Saurian Star Host. That's Grimdark Future. So the Saurian Star Host are a very specific sub-faction in terms of their aesthetic and their force. They're very much lizardmen from basically Warhammer Fantasy, but they're in the distant future. These guys are all waking up out of cryostasis, not unlike the Necrons in 40k, but where the Necrons are trying to reconquer their old territory, the Saurians are more interested in rediscovering their ancient lost territories and ensuring that they are properly restored, as they should be. If I was to give you an example of what their culture is like, they are literally vat-grown for specific tasks. So their whole civilization is in a caste structure. It's an enlightened caste structure, as they're given support as they need to. But general rule of thumb, these guys come in 3 varieties. The smaller geckos, think skinks, scholarly, intelligent, nimbly-pimbly, very fast hands. You have the traditional Saurians, who are the baseline troopers, they're the warriors. They're also like, kind of wherever force of personality is required, leadership caste. Think very elites from Halo. If the geckos are very much a combination of the jackals and the grunts. These guys are basically these are the elites, the Sangheli of their faction. Above them you have gators, think brutes, very much like big, hulking, very much built around like brute force labor and brute force effort and energy. Think if a crocodile stood upright and then hulked out 8 times and got a Stretch Armstrong sized like torso. It's basically what we're talking about. There's a 4th final cast, frog mages. Slun from Warhammer Fantasy more or less, but in practical speaking, these guys are like the equivalent of the prophets. Unlike the prophets, they're not full of bullshit. They actually possess insane magical aptitude. They can literally bend the weave of reality to their whims. Unfortunately, there's not many of them, and many of them are frozen in stasis chambers across the galaxy after their civilization crumbled a long time ago. And now that they're finally getting their footing again, they're slowly trying to find all their leaders. So, within our region, our Saurian subgroup, which I need to make sure I've got this correct. Here we go. Moving that back. Our Saurian subfaction is known as the Edge of Dusk. These guys are a very specific threat
to the region. They are an Imperial force. They are not rebuilding themselves. They are not moving in from an external area. They have existed here. This is their home. This is their territory. They settled here long ago, and they're quite content to remain settled here moving into the future. So I'm just going to very quickly doodle out these guys. Go give these guys a little bit of teeth. There we are. So for them, they're fighting for, as far as they're concerned, their existence. All the humans, all the other forces, besides maybe the robot legions, are all interlopers in their territory. And they want us out. At very least, they want their borders respected, which, take a wild guess how well humanity's handling that. Not very well. There we are. Cool. So that'll do. That'll give us sort of our quick doodle of these guys. As far as their armor color goes, I've been using mostly white and I've been using mostly yellow and brown with a little bit of silver here and there as needed as their primary armor color, and brown leather. Here we go. Very much trying to lean into the Sangheili side with these guys. So have you ever wondered who would win, Space Marines or Elites from Halo? That's what we're testing here. That's what this faction's whole thing is. Also, scaly bait. Gonna be real. Just gonna be real. There we go. Cool. So now we have these guys over here. Saurian Starhost. Duplicate that. Save, so I don't lose any progress. Cool. Saurian Starhost. Cool, and then I can sort of take these and shrink these as we need. 18. Cool. Hit that with gold. Awesome. So you have our Saurian Starhost over here, and they're forcing their way back into the sector quite aggressively. And if it looks like the Charybdis Sector is under constant attack, you're right, it is. That's the whole point. The Knights Numenary are dealing with the Saurian Starhost. And the Robot Legions, Guardians Culprite Robot Legions Tau Union, Arachnia Astra are dealing with Havoc Cults. Who the hell are the Vendors Titian fighting, besides all the external forces of the humans? Well, that's easy. Because unfortunately, these are just the ones that we've talked about from the external side of things. There's still 2 more big factions of what we would consider Xenos in the 40k parlance left to deal with. And these forces are the 2 species I've invented. That's right, I wasn't satisfied with just a total of... How many sub-factions is this? 7 enemies? Nah, it's not enough. We need more. We need more threats. So, let's start with one of my favorites that I designed. The Chorus. So the Chorus are unique. First off, biological life form. Not like the robot legions, not like the Tau, where they're basically people wearing super powered, like, tech armor. No, these guys rely entirely on their own natural physiology to survive. They can hone their physiology psychically, and so as a result, they literally sculpt themselves into whatever task they need, and they themselves share a true hive mind. This is why they're called the Chorus. They are incredibly psychically gifted, very cunning, very much protective of their secrecy, and very mysterious. But they're starting to appear as a threat within the region, and one that has to be dealt with. So the Chorus. Average height, 9 to 10 feet, as you can see from, I think you can see from, the brother in the background here. They are the elusive faction that I've worked on. I actually need to get a little bit of rules done for these guys because I think they're so freaking cool. Hive equals 10k friends easy. Yes, I debated very briefly doing the alien hives, but not yet. I think that threat is a little bit far away. So the Chorus, with their third eye, very demon coded as a species, kind of the point. So over here, the Chorus. Alright, and we're just going to quickly pop in here and borrow this. We'll go down to the Havoc Cults at the closest. Copy. Paste. Beautiful. Even brought it closer to us. That works. We're going to slightly dim that so it's a little more legible for people who can't perceive super bright colors occasionally on bright white. That is me. I'm the occasional. So we have the Chorus over here. And then on the other side, as they push in, the Venator's Titian are basically fighting everyone over here, is the big secret for them. They're more or less embattled on all fronts. So they fight the Human Defense Force, they're fighting the Chorus, they're fighting the Sister Missionaries, There's a reason why I call them the angsty boys. They're probably the ones who have the most skin in the game, metaphorically speaking. But then finally, we have one last little group. One last little sub-faction here we gotta do. And that would be the Chill Kit. So the Chill Kit are the raiders of my sub-faction. Or of my little subsection of the Charybdis Sector. These guys are aggressive and very much plunderers. No one really understands them. Where the chorus, they can sort of be understood, but they are intentionally aloof, mysterious, and elusive. The Chill Kit are loud and brash and abrupt and violent. They're not orcs. There are orcs in one-page rules in Grimdark Future. This is not orcs. This is a separate faction. They plunder, they steal tech, they basically like cyborg hack themselves. They are very aggressive, and they attack seemingly without warning and relentless and just everywhere all at once. I like to compare them to sharks. Where did you land? Oh, here we go. As I get their weird bean heads. Their weird Baymax heads. Oh, darker color. So the Chill Kit have taken to plundering the region aggressively for resources, and basically constantly becoming a threat. Oh, I see what happened here. I really made them look a little cuter than I meant to, but I'm okay with that mistake. I'll own it. So then over here. So make sure I spell their name correctly. Chill Kit. There we go. Duplicate that. Move that to here. Save fast. And we're going to make that blue, because I have not used blue yet, besides like a little bit of the Knight's Numinary. Here we go. So we have the Chill Kit. They're weird bean heads. I love their weird bean heads. They're so strange. So here are our general factions, and what they're all up to, more or less. Everyone's attacking the Watch Charybdis in some way, shape, or form. And at the core of it are our embattled brothers, desperately trying to keep what, let's be honest, what the mess that this is. Slowly whittling its way away at everything. So I'm very much looking forward to more details about these factions as you guys encounter them in the comic. Right now, the current plot of the webcomic is set around the brothers having gathered together for the Watch Charybdis and discussing the battlefront. we're going to probably leap right from that to the actual action, which is a big change of what I was originally planning. Originally I was planning on having like this moot take place and then slowly walking through what's going on within the sector, what everyone is going to be doing, how they're swapping hands, that sort of thing. But instead, I kind of like the idea of instead moving into the next arc with the Brothers comic and just like leaping right into the action. Because I think that'll help a lot. And then using like the moot as a flashback tool. So yeah, that's the long and short of it, guys. I appreciate you all so much for sticking with me through this long, long thing as I lay out all the factions and all the different ways that they're influencing each other. You guys are all awesome, I hope you know it. And anyhow, I think this is where we're probably going to call it for the day. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I am the last Omnitect, your favorite robot American. Don't forget to like, subscribe, slap the bell, you know, threateningly call the subscribe button, do whatever you gotta do. But follow us in the future. Don't forget the Patreon. Link is in the description if you want to support me there. Follow me on Blue Sky and also on Tumblr for the webcomic. And I'll see you all soon. Take care, Voyagers. Peace.